I don't feel that any conversation or discussion of issues of gender related to conversation patterns would be complete without addressing the notion or the concept of mansplaining. If you've not yet watched the video I posted by Rebecca Solnit, stop now and go back and watch it. It's really important that you do, because she tells a story that helps to illustrate mansplaining. So I'm going to assume you did it. If you haven't done it, do that. And you only have to watch to just about the 9:30 mark, when she starts talking about sort of more traditional politics like the Bush administration and so forth. You can stop there. You don't have to go on that far. But she's talking about mansplaining, though the word is actually not hers, but anyway, it's drawn from her work, right? So like I say, so you need to watch Rebecca Solnit's Men Explain Things to Me. And by the way, when you watched it, did you catch a sort of reference there to muted group? Because she said a colleague, and I believe she said it was at UC Berkeley, talked about the importance of the word to identify the experience and feel like it wasn't just you. She says that you can get a handle on. Ah, muted group, naming experiences, right? All like part of the same thing. Okay, so what really is mansplaining? Because Solnit doesn't define mansplaining for us. As she says, it's not really truly her thing. But the story she tells is one about the fact that a person, in this case it was a man, right, takes the position in conversation of teacher to student in a situation which shouldn't be teacher to student, right? So it may include, I mean, this term is a little loose, right? But whether it includes condescension or not is up for debate. I mean, condescension is sort of blatantly talking down, but at the very least, perhaps assuming that another person wants to have it explained to them. Very often, though, when we talk about mansplaining, it is, as she sort of got it with her story, the idea that, well, I actually do know quite a bit about that because you're talking about my thing to me. That's weird, right? It's more mansplaining. And also, it doesn't have to be a man doing it, and the recipient doesn't have to be a woman. But typically, that is what we're talking about. And I think Solnit addresses that nicely in her talk. So, is it sexed? Is this a sexed behavior? Well, of course, we would never say this is something that men do and that women would never do, right? But is it gendered? Well, it does seem that perhaps it is gendered. And I ask you, as I'm making this case, to think about what I've talked about in the previous lectures on patterns we've seen in men and women in their speech. And so, as I said, women and men don't really seem to use a lot. They use a slightly more sort of language than women. Okay, that's fine. But we do see certain things like men speak for longer at a time, right? Sort of before coming up for air, right? Men speak longer at a time. Women engage in more conversational turns. Bragging, sort of, I always think about like this peacock, right? Sort of the big display, the feathers, right? That's the peacock. Uh, you know, so that bragging, that showing off, we see as masculine, we see as showing competence, and it's something that we find less attractive in women. You can see how these are behaviors that sort of, or these are patterns that would support events like mansplaining. And again, I fully stand behind, I think, yeah, what Rebecca Solnit says about mansplaining and the pattern of issues that she talks about is not being about all of men, but a certain thing that she has often experienced, which is much what we're doing here in gender, right? There's a pattern we often experience, and as I said in that very first lecture, when we see that pattern, let's ask, what's that construct behind it? And it probably goes back to issues about who's allowed to show expertise and who's not. So that's a little bit of what it's about mansplaining. And I want you to think about this concept of mansplaining and its relationship to conversational patterns, as I just reviewed, right? Length of time talking versus turn taking and bragging. Think about that as we move into discussion of performance and performativity for the next chapter.